when the sun is just a whisper in the sky, before the birds cry out in chorus, and the earth begins her daily hum, God speaks. He speaks not in thunder or trumpet, not in grand gesture or overwhelming fire, but in the quiet, the holy hush, the sacred stillness before the world awakens to its own noise. And child, you must listen.
Oh, yes.
You must listen. When the hush of night begins to slip away, and the black velvet sky yields to a quiet gray, there is a stirring. Not in the streets, not in the crowds, but in the soul. A holy breath moves across creation, gentle as a lullaby and deep as eternity. That breath, my child, is the whisper of the Almighty. He comes like the dew, unannounced, unforced, and undeniable. And in that sacred stillness, before clocks tick too loudly and before traffic screams for attention, God speaks. He does not come shouting. No, that is not his way. He is not a showman. He is a father, a potter, a poet. He speaks like one who knows the very rhythm of your blood, the weight of your thoughts, and the dreams still hanging from your eyelashes. God does not compete with the noise of the world. He waits for the stillness of your heart. That is why the morning is so sacred. The veil between heaven and earth seems thin. And if you're quiet enough, if you're hungry enough, you just might hear him. Some folks think they need thunder and lightning to believe it's God. They want burning bushes and angelic choirs. But the truth is, he's been speaking all along. In the sigh of the wind through the curtains. In the warmth of sunlight on your skin. In that verse that you've read 100 times, but today it sounds like it was etched just for you. In the name of a person who suddenly drifts into your mind with no explanation. That's how he speaks, not always in words, but always in love. And oh, how tender is his morning voice. You can feel it before you hear it. It enters like peace, like an answer before you even know the question, like a hand on your shoulder that makes you weep, not out of sorrow, but out of recognition. Because the voice of God sounds like home. It sounds like everything you've been chasing in people, in places, in plans. And in the morning, when the world hasn't crowded your mind, he meets you there. No pretense. No performance. Just presence. You don't need to be perfect to hear him. You don't need to have fancy words or spotless pasts. You just need to be present. You just need to be still. For it is written, "Be still and know that I am God." And what a knowing that is. It's the kind of knowing that holds you steady when your bank account trembles. It's the knowing that steadies your hands when the doctor delivers hard news. It's the knowing that brings joy not because everything is right, but because he is there. And child, let me tell you something. When you make space for that voice in the morning, it changes everything. You don't walk into your day the same. Your steps are firmer. Your words are kinder. Your eyes are softer. Why? Because you have been with the Lord. And when you sit in the presence of peace, peace will follow you. When you commune with wisdom, wisdom will guide you. When you've been touched by grace, grace will pour from you. The world will try to make you forget. The phone will buzz, the demands will rise, and the deadlines will loom. But oh, if you have heard him in the morning, you'll remember who you are. You'll remember whose you are. You'll remember that you are not a slave to fear, or anxiety, or business. You are a child of the Most High, walking through your day with the quiet power of someone who has already received their marching orders. That's what the morning does. It orders your soul. It realigns your spirit. It reminds you that while the world may ask for your hustle, heaven asks for your heart. There is something holy about being awake while the world still sleeps. Something sacred about giving your first thoughts to God, not to news, not to noise. Because the first voice you hear in the morning often becomes the loudest voice you carry all day. Let that voice be God's. Let his truth drown out the lies that say you are not enough. Let his assurance steady the shaking inside you. Let his promises blanket your mind like armor. and let us not pretend it is always easy. Some mornings the bed feels safer than the world. Some mornings your spirit feels too broken to be quiet. But those are the mornings to listen harder, because God is not far from the broken-hearted. He comes closest when you are at your lowest. His whispers are strongest when your strength is gone. And sometimes the only thing he says is, "I am here." But child, if that's all he says, it is more than enough. There is healing in his morning presence. There is clarity. There is correction, yes, but also compassion. There is no shame in his tone, only truth. And the truth will not crush you. It will free you. That is the nature of the voice of God. It does not accuse, it convicts. It does not condemn. It calls you higher. So listen. Before the sun stretches herself across the sky, before the world demands your attention, before doubt gets a chance to speak, listen. Create a sanctuary in your soul where he can come and dwell. Read his word and let it read you. Pour out your fears and wait for his peace. Sing if you must. Cry if you need. But listen, because the God who hung stars in their sockets and told the sea how far to crawl has something to say to you. Not because you're famous, not because you're flawless, but because you are his. So rise with intention. Meet him in the quiet, and let his voice become your compass. For if you begin with God, you won't end in chaos. And that, beloved, is the miracle of a morning well spent. We live in a world that worships speed. Everything moves fast, too fast. Messages fly across the globe in seconds. Deadlines demand your peace. Alarms ring and people run. But child, let me tell you something that the elders used to say while rocking on front porches and humming soft gospel under their breath. You can't hear God if you're too busy listening to everything else. And oh, how true that is. The voice of God is not found in the chaos. It's not in the hustle or the hurry. He ain't shouting from the top of your to-do list. No, ma'am. God speaks in silence. He waits in the spaces between your thoughts. He waits in the pauses you ignore. And to hear him, truly hear him, you must learn the art of slowing down. There's a rhythm to heaven, a divine stillness. And unless you quiet your spirit, you'll miss it every time. That's why the morning is so precious. It's not just the start of your day. It's a gift, a sacred invitation. The world hasn't gotten noisy yet, and your soul hasn't been covered with the dust of the day. It's the perfect time to be still, to be present, to listen. But what do we do instead? We wake up and grab our phones. We scroll through other people's lives before we've even spoken to the giver of life. We drink coffee before we drink from the well of God's word. We feed our anxiety before we feed our spirit. And we wonder why we feel empty before noon. Now don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with work, with responsibility, with ambition. But baby, when those things outrun your connection with God, you will find yourself climbing ladders that lead to nowhere. Because success without peace is just a faster road to burnout. You must anchor your morning in the one who holds the whole day. God is not rushing you. He's not pressing you to be perfect. He's asking you to pause. He's saying, "Come, sit with me. I've been waiting." And oh, what power there is in that pause, in that moment of stillness, before the day takes over. God can pour into you what no job, no relationship, no validation ever could. He reminds you of who you are. He reminds you of whose you are. He sets your feet on solid ground so that when the winds of the world come, and they will, you will not be moved. But you have to slow down to receive that kind of grounding. Have you ever watched the ocean in the early morning? Have you noticed how still it becomes just before the sun kisses the horizon? That's how your soul must be. Not constantly tossing, not always running, but still, trusting. Stillness is not weakness. It is strength under control. Stillness is not laziness. It is divine awareness. Stillness is not absence. It is sacred presence. And in that presence, God whispers truths the world will never tell you. He will remind you that you are enough before you do a single thing. He will tell you to forgive that person your pride still hates. He will tell you to call your mother. He will nudge you toward purpose, not performance. But none of that happens if you're too rushed to hear him. See, the enemy of your soul wants you busy, not fruitful, just busy. He wants you distracted. He wants your mind racing, your schedule full, your heart numb. Because a distracted soul doesn't hear divine instruction. A hurried heart can't hold heavenly wisdom. That's why the world celebrates being booked and busy. But heaven calls you to be still and blessed. So how do you slow down? You start by saying no. No to the pressure of perfection. No to the addiction of always being available. No to the lie that rest must be earned. You carve out time. You protect the silence. You open your Bible, not to check a box, but to hear from your Father. You sip your tea with gratitude. You light a candle and invite peace into the room. And most of all, you listen. Not with your ears alone, but with your spirit. And don't you think for 1 second that slowing down is easy. No, it takes courage. It takes rebellion against the systems that scream, do more, be more, get more. But beloved, your worth is not measured by how many things you accomplish in a day. Your worth is anchored in the fact that you are made in the image of a God who rested. If God, who created the galaxies, who flung stars into space and called them by name, if he rested, then so must you, and not just any rest, intentional rest, holy rest, morning rest, because when you slow down in the morning, you give your soul time to breathe before the day steals your attention. You let your spirit take root before the winds blow. You align your thoughts with heaven before the world tries to define your day. And let me tell you something powerful. When you start your day with God, you start from victory. You don't chase peace, you carry it. You don't search for answers, you walk in wisdom. You don't wait for affirmation, you live from identity. All because you slowed down. All because you paused long enough to listen. So tomorrow, when the alarm goes off and your mind begins to run, stop. Sit on the edge of the bed. Take a breath. Speak his name. Jesus. Just one word. And wait. Feel the peace rise. Let his spirit meet you there in the hush. Let his word fall like dew on your heart, and watch how your day transforms. You see, the secret is not in doing more. It's in doing less with him. God does not demand your business. He desires your presence. And in the morning, before the world gets loud, he is calling you softly, lovingly, faithfully. Listen and live. There is a sweetness in the way God speaks to the human soul. A gentleness, like the brushing of a mother's hand against the cheek of her sleeping child. It is not thunder, though he can thunder. It is not fire, though he can burn. No, his voice in the morning is the sound of love itself. It is patient. It is knowing. It is tender. And it is tailored just for you. You see, when God speaks in the early hours of the day, he does not come with the language of condemnation. He does not greet you with a list of your failures. He does not rehearse your shame. That is not his way. That is the language of the world, the tone of the accuser. But the voice of God, oh, child, the voice of God calls you beloved. The voice of God calls you worthy. It reminds you that you are not defined by your yesterdays, but by his eternal love. And when that love rises with the morning light, it touches every wound in you with healing hands. For what else can soothe the ache of your soul but the assurance that you are seen and known and still chosen? That is the music of the morning voice of God. He speaks identity into your being. He sings your name into courage, and he calls you not by your sin, but by your destiny. Listen closely. He says, "You are mine," and in those 3 words is a lifetime of grace. He says, "You are forgiven," and in that one truth every chain breaks. He says, "You are not alone," and suddenly even the silence doesn't feel so empty. This is the personal, deliberate, loving tone of your Creator, not distant, not formal, but familiar like a father leaning in close to tell his child, I'm proud of you. He speaks to your spirit in ways no one else can. When you feel exhausted from battles no one sees, he knows. When you cry into your pillow, silent tears in the darkness, he sees. And when your heart can no longer find the words to pray, he still hears. For he knows you. Not the mask you wear, not the performance you put on, but the raw, unedited yearning you. And that is why his voice is so life-giving, because it comes from one who truly knows you and loves you still. He does not need your polish. He does not require your perfection. He comes to your brokenness, not in disgust but with delight, ready to make beauty from the ashes. You see, God is not like man. People will speak to the version of you that they see, the one you show them. But God speaks to the version of you that he made. He speaks to the child before the trauma. He speaks to the dream before the disappointment. He speaks to the purpose before the pain. And each morning, he calls that version of you to rise again. He knows what you need to hear before you say a word. Maybe you need to be comforted. Maybe you need to be reminded. Maybe you need to be corrected. But always, always, you need to be loved. And he does that, unfailingly, generously, daily. He will whisper strength into your weakness. He will place his word like a balm on your anxious heart. He will open your eyes to something beautiful. Maybe a sunrise, maybe a scripture, maybe a song that drifts through the window just in time to catch your spirit. That's how he does it. Not loud, but unmistakable. And you don't need to perform for that voice. You don't need to earn it. All you need is a willing ear and a soft heart. His words aren't reserved for the holy few. They're for the hurting, the hungry, the humble. And when you come to him in the morning with your coffee and your questions, with your bedhead and your burdens, he will meet you there, because love is not afraid of your mess. It enters into it and transforms it. His voice is a mirror, too, but not like the kind the world holds up. When the world shows you your reflection, it points out your scars and calls them shame. But when God speaks, he shows you your scars and calls them stories. He calls them survival. He calls them strength, because his love never diminishes your truth. It redeems it. And let me tell you, beloved, there's power in knowing that God speaks directly to you. There's power in knowing that heaven is not far off or indifferent. The Creator of stars leans down to speak into the life of someone like you. That alone should make you sit up a little straighter. That alone should make you walk into your day with dignity, because if God has spoken over your morning, no weapon formed against you can prosper in the afternoon. Now don't be mistaken. His voice may not always come the way you expect. It might not sound like a shout or a sermon. Sometimes it sounds like conviction in your spirit when you're about to say something you shouldn't. Sometimes it feels like a pull on your heart to check on someone, to give, to forgive, to pause. And sometimes it's as simple as peace when nothing around you makes sense. That's still God speaking. He doesn't have to say much to say everything. One word from him can reroute your entire life. One whisper can unclench the fist of fear in your chest. One verse can hold you when everything else is falling apart. And when you learn to recognize that voice, when it becomes more familiar than the noise of the world, you start to live differently. You speak differently. You love differently. Because when you've heard from love itself, you can't help but let that love overflow. So I say to you now, as tenderly as he says it to you each morning, listen. Let his voice be the first you hear, the one you cherish, the one that shapes your thoughts and steadies your steps. Because when God speaks to you personally, it means you are no longer walking through life alone. You are walking with direction, with favor, with hope. And that, beloved, is a gift worth rising early for. There is a silence that falls sometimes, so heavy it feels like a weight across your chest. A quiet that stretches too long, a stillness that begins to ache. You kneel, you speak, you wait, and nothing. No whisper, no sign, no holy nudge. And you wonder with a trembling heart and eyes turned to heaven, Lord, where are you? Ah, beloved, let me tell you something the old mothers used to say in the back pews of the church. The teacher is always silent during the test. Yes, even God, gentle and mighty, ever near and always watching, has moments when his voice falls quiet. And it is not to punish you, no. It is to prepare you. Because the silence of God is not his absence. It is his strategy. See, when God is quiet, he is not far. He is watching, working, waiting for your trust to deepen. You may feel abandoned, but feelings are not facts. You may feel forgotten, but the truth is, you are engraved on the palm of his hand. And when he is silent, he is often doing his most delicate work. He is rearranging circumstances, softening hearts, and strengthening your spirit. But he does it in the quiet, because some work is too holy for noise. Child, we've been raised in a world that fears silence. The moment we hear nothing, we grab our phones, turn on a screen, fill the air with sound. But in the divine realm, silence is not emptiness. It is invitation. God's silence beckons you deeper, past the place of feelings, into the place of faith. And faith, my dear, is not built on constant confirmation. Faith is built when you stand in the dark with no flashlight and say, I still believe. Do you remember Job, a man upright and righteous, yet stripped of everything he loved? And in the middle of his loss, he cried out to God, and for a time, God said nothing. But that silence did not mean Job was forsaken. That silence meant God was listening, watching, trusting Job to hold on. And oh, when the silence finally broke, the voice of God came with thunder, wisdom, and glory that lit the skies. Sometimes silence is God's way of tuning your ears. When everything around you grows still, your soul becomes more attentive. You begin to notice things, small things. The softness of your breath, the beating of your heart, the way his word still carries life even when it's not shouted. You begin to remember that he doesn't just speak in dramatic ways. He speaks in memory, in creation, in presence in you. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to feel like heaven has gone mute. It hurts when your prayers feel like they hit the ceiling and fall back into your lap. But know this, child, God's silence is not the same as rejection. He is not ignoring you. He is inviting you to grow. Because faith that only functions when God is loud is a fragile faith. But faith that survives the silence is faith that can move mountains. Let me ask you something tender. When he was speaking, were you listening? Sometimes God grows quiet because he already spoke, and we ignored it. Sometimes we asked for confirmation of what we didn't want to obey, and in his silence, he allows the weight of his last word to settle in us. Not to shame us, but to stir us back to remembrance, to call us back to the place where we first heard him say, go,
Wait.
forgive, trust. And yet sometimes God grows silent, not because you've done something wrong, but because he's strengthening what's right. A baby bird learns to fly not because the mother hovers, but because she steps back. She lets the wind do what only the wind can do. And God, in his deep wisdom, sometimes steps back, not out of cruelty, but out of confidence, because he knows what he placed inside you. He knows the prayer life you're building. He sees the strength forming in your silence. He sees the worship rising from your wilderness. And when you lift your hands in a room full of questions, when you praise in the middle of a pause, when you say, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. That, child, is faith at its finest. Let us not forget Jesus himself walked through divine silence. In the Garden of Gethsemane he cried out, let this cup pass from me. And the heavens held their breath. No booming voice, no angels rushing to comfort, just silence. And yet he rose. He carried the cross. He obeyed. and through that silence, salvation was born. So if you're walking through a quiet season, if God seems far, if his voice seems faint, take heart. The silence is not punishment. It is an invitation to trust. Trust not what you feel, but what you know. Know that he is good. Know that he is working. Know that he is there even in the hush. And let me say this gently. Do not despise the silence. Cherish it. For when the silence lifts, and you will hear him more clearly, more surely, more intimately, because silence purifies the heart. It sifts the soul. It removes the noise and leaves only the sacred. Sit with him in the silence. Bring your questions, your ache, your longing, and then wait. Wait with reverence. Wait with expectation. Wait like one who knows that heaven never forgets a name. And while you wait, speak the promises he already gave you. Remind your heart that he is faithful, even when you cannot feel him. Remind your soul that he is near, even when he is quiet. Remind yourself that silence is not the end of the conversation. It's just a pause before the next chapter begins. Because when God breaks his silence, he never speaks small. He speaks breakthrough. He speaks healing. He speaks restoration. He speaks love that wraps around you like morning light through an open window. And when that voice returns, when it comes rushing back like a river after drought, you will understand that the silence was not God turning away. It was God drawing you close, inviting you to hear with new ears, to believe with deeper faith, and to walk with unshakable trust. So be still, dear heart. Be still. God may be silent, but he is not gone. And when he speaks again, oh, it will be worth the wait. When the Lord speaks in the stillness of the morning, his words are not meant to settle in your ears alone. They are meant to settle in your soul and stir your feet. His voice is not idle. His voice is not ornamental. It is alive. It is active. It is calling you not just to hear, but to move. Because, child, listening to God without obedience is like holding a seed in your palm and never planting it. Potential with no harvest, beauty with no birth. Now, we live in a time where everyone wants a word from God, but not everyone wants to walk that word out. They crave confirmation, but not correction. They want the promise, but not the process. But make no mistake, my dear, when God speaks, he speaks for a reason. His voice comes with direction, with instruction, with purpose. And your response must be more than a head nod or a hallelujah. It must be surrender. It must be obedience. Obedience is not blind. It is brave. It says, Lord, I may not understand the full picture, but I trust the painter. Obedience is not passive. It is powerful. It says, I will step, even if I step afraid. I will move, even if I move trembling. Because trust in God is not proven by your words. It is proven by your walk. You can't say, speak, Lord, and then refuse to follow when he calls. That's not faith. That's familiarity. And God does not speak to be admired. He speaks to be followed. Sometimes he'll tell you to do something that makes no sense to the people around you. He may whisper, forgive her, when your pride says she doesn't deserve it. He may nudge you, leave that job, when it's the only security you've known. He may call you to speak, to give, to wait, to stay, or to go, and all of it may seem strange to the natural mind. But baby, obedience is not about understanding. It's about alignment. And oh, how heaven moves when a soul is aligned. You see, the miracle is not just in hearing God. It's in doing what he said. Noah didn't just hear God's instructions to build an ark. He picked up the wood, the hammer, the nails. Abraham didn't just receive the promise. He walked up the mountain with his son in faith. Mary didn't just hear Gabriel's announcement. She said, "Be it unto me," and carried the promise of salvation in her womb. It is the doing that activates the power of the word. And let me tell you, obedience will cost you something. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you applause. It may even cost you relationships. But what you gain, peace, purpose, divine protection, cannot be bought in this world. God does not ask for your obedience because he wants control. No, he asks because he knows what's ahead. He sees the storm before the clouds gather. He sees the danger before your feet ever step close. And when he speaks, it is to guide you around what could break you, or through what will make you. Some of us miss our blessing not because God didn't speak, but because we didn't act. We wanted signs and wonders, but we ignored the whisper. We asked for clarity, but we dismissed conviction. We wanted him to speak louder, but he was waiting for us to listen better. And let me tell you this, child-delayed obedience is still disobedience. The longer you wait to do what God said, the more room the enemy has to confuse you. Every moment you hesitate, fear grows louder. Doubt gains ground. But when you obey quickly, you silence the voices that try to talk you out of your destiny. Now, don't you think obedience means you'll always see immediate results? No, sir. Sometimes obedience leads you into a wilderness before it leads you into the promise. Sometimes it makes things messier before they get miraculous. But obedience is never wasted. God never forgets a yes that costs you something. Every act of obedience writes your name deeper into his story. And oh, what a powerful story it becomes when your life becomes a testimony of trust. Even when the task is small, rise early and pray. Bless that stranger. Apologize first. Close your mouth when your flesh wants to speak. Obedience in the small prepares you for the mighty. Because how can he trust you with nations if you ignore him in the morning? Let me talk to the ones who say, I don't know if I heard him right. My dear, if the voice you heard draws you to love, to forgive, to grow in holiness, to walk in peace, then that voice bears his fragrance. You may not be certain of every detail, but you don't need perfect clarity to obey. You need perfect trust. God honors movement. He honors faith. And even if you stumble, he will catch you. But he can't guide what won't move. Obedience will sometimes make you look foolish. That's all right. Noah looked foolish until it rained. David looked foolish dancing before the Lord until the favor followed. Jesus looked foolish hanging on that cross until Sunday came and the grave broke open. So if God has spoken to your heart this morning, don't just write it in a journal and close the book. Don't let it sit in your memory like yesterday's dream. Do something with it. Move with it. Let his word take root in your hands and feet. Let it be lived. Because obedience is not about how loud you shout in church. It's about how quietly you follow when no one else is watching. When the Lord speaks in the morning, he is not filling the air with poetry. He is placing destiny into your lap. And it is your obedience that unwraps it. So listen, child, then move. And may your steps echo with the sound of someone who trusts not just in God's voice, but in his wisdom. Because when you obey the whisper, you align yourself with wonders. And wonders always follow obedience.